And so let's just get started with some quick email do's and don'ts. And first of all, my first email do for you is to start using email templates. If only for the purpose of saving you time by decreasing the amount of time you spend writing emails, I think it's extremely important to use email templates. Time is your most valuable resource. It's the one resource you can't buy more of. The more effective you are at using your time, the more you're likely to increase your sales. And regarding email templates, this is so important and also quite easy in that you are going to face the same situations when you're prospecting. Either you're sending an email to someone who doesn't know who you are. You're sending an email to someone you spoke to for a couple minutes. You need to send an email to someone you just left a voicemail for. You just had a meeting or an appointment with someone and you need to send a follow-up email. So these same situations repeat again and again. So why spend time writing out those emails each time? Create email templates. So create a cold email templates, create follow-up email templates, create voicemail follow-up emails, create meeting follow-up email templates. Not only will this help you to save time, but I believe that when you start to use these templates again and again, you're going to basically, instead of rewriting and reinventing the wheel each time you create the message, you're going to be building on the same templates and be improving those over time. So the next do that I recommend is take a step back and try to understand the prospect that you're sending emails to or that you're creating these email templates for. And some of these we've already talked about before, but in trying to understand the prospect, you need to assume that the people that you're emailing are extremely busy. And it's just this straightforward that if you're writing emails and you're more aware of how busy the person that you're sending the email to is, that will help you to have more clarity on just how short your email message should be. You should also be fully aware that you're not the only salesperson sending emails to your prospect. If your prospect did not receive other emails from salespeople, you could be less careful about the email that you send because your email is in a daily stream of incoming emails to the people that you're emailing. You need to be aware of that, and that should impact what you say and how you design your email. The other thing is that you need to be aware that humans don't primarily care about their own stuff. You care about your own stuff as a salesperson. You care about your product, your company that you work for, the product you want to sell, closing sales. Your prospect doesn't care about those things because your prospect cares about their own stuff, like their own job, their own goals and objectives at the company they work for. They care about their own company, their own improving the sales and results and performance of their own company. It's very likely that you're about to send an email to someone, and if you knew that that person was researching for the product that you sell, then you could probably be a little less careful about how you craft your message. But the reality is that it's probably most likely that they're not in buying mode for what you sell. So you need to be aware of that when you're figuring out what to email and what to say. And because of some of these things, like your prospects are busy, they get a lot of emails from salespeople, they care about their own stuff, they're not in buying mode, they're probably getting a lot of emails that aren't sales related, meaning emails from internal resources, internal projects, employees that report to them, and whatnot. So you can just assume that your prospect deletes a lot of the emails they receive without being read. That's extremely important for you to be aware of, because there's a good chance that they could delete your email without reading it. So while that is what it is, and it's something for you to be aware of, it should play a key role in your email prospecting. You want to send an email, and you have a product or products to sell, so it's most likely that your natural instinct with sending this email and the way you're creating it is that you really want to design an email that gets the prospect to read the email so they hear your message that you want to tell them. And you probably want the prospect to reply to the email that you're going to send to them. And ultimately, you want the prospect to buy your product. I think it's just safe to assume that if you're really not looking at the big picture and you're putting together your email, these are the things you really want to accomplish. And that's just your natural instinct, being a human and also being a salesperson that has a quota to hit and commissions you want to make. Now, what I want you to do is realize that while that's your natural instinct, there's another thing for you to focus on. And that thing is that if prospects delete emails very quickly, instead of thinking about how can I get the prospect to read my message and to reply to my email, maybe you could just focus on what can I do to prevent the prospect from instantly deleting my email. And it might not even be that you're trying to get them to read your email for an extended period of time, but if you can just decrease how quickly they delete your email, well, that is a huge improvement. It's of course not a direct connection to your goal of selling your product, but it is a big improvement. And the reality is that if we go back to the goal of getting the prospect to read the email or to reply or even to buy the product, the formula and design and decisions that have to be made to be successful with that is very complicated, and it's very difficult. Not to say it's impossible, not to say you should give up on it or not ever think about that, but it is very difficult. And the formula is maybe unique for every different product you sell and every different salesperson and every different prospect. So it's just a very complex side. The reality is on the other side, it's pretty straightforward and easy to figure out small things you can do to decrease your prospect from instantly deleting your email. So what I'm going to talk about here today, we're going to talk about some things that help on the left side with getting prospects interested and educating them. But a lot of what I'm going to focus on is communicating in a way so that your prospects just don't instantly delete your message and that you're just dead as soon as you're getting out of the water. Moving through some more email do's and don'ts, these are going to apply directly to that. And so the first one is don't do everything you can to not motivate the instant delete. So we call this the instant delete, which is basically your prospect looks, maybe they only read the subject line, maybe they just glance at your email for 2 seconds and they instantly delete it. So what can we do to help with that? Well, the first thing is you want to be as brief as possible with your email. And a lot of this has to do with your prospect is extremely busy. So put yourself in the shoes, if you can think back to when you were in school as a child, do you ever recall getting a reading assignment and looking at how long it was? How many pages are in the chapter? How many pages are in the book that you have to read? Picture your prospect thinking like that. And that if your email is long, and it doesn't even have to be the word count, it could even be how it looks. Like if you don't put enough spacing and you have everything in large paragraphs, the email could look longer. So not only do you want to use brevity and word count, you also want to use brevity in how the layout and design of your sentences and paragraphs. I would just tell you, be as brief as possible. And what you might want to do is type out the email that you want to send and then look at it. And what I recommend is look at your emails in the same way that you might try to pack a suitcase for a long business trip. If you've ever taken like a 2-week trip, you'll know that you really have to be smart about what you take. You can't take enough shirts and shoes and pants for every day of your trip. You're going to need to reuse some stuff. You're going to need to get creative, and you're going to need to be careful not to bring stuff that you have a low probability of using. So I would want you to look at the words in your email in the same way, because most likely you can say a sentence in the exact same way with less words if you just try to be more careful and really look at it. Or there might be a sentence that you can remove by just really thinking, do I really need that? Do I really need to say that in order to get my point across? Because your prospects are getting bombarded with prospecting emails, cold emails from salespeople all day, every day, you want to do everything you can to not sound like a salesperson that's trying to sell something. If they think you're just the next salesperson and all you're trying to do is sell your product to them and push something on them, that motivates the instant delete. So anything you can do to decrease that. I'm not saying that you should lie or be manipulative, but there are things that you can do to sound more like a business person or a consultant rather than a pushy, product pushing salesperson. And it's okay to be a representative of a company to present the fact that you probably have a product or service that you would like to present to them or represent at some point, but that's different than being a product pusher. And we're going to talk about that here today, but every chapter of the Smart Sales System will help you with that. One way to not sound like a salesperson and one way to continue to try to understand the prospect is I told you that the prospect is human and humans care about their own stuff. You care about selling your product. The prospect doesn't really care about buying your product. They care about improving their job, their company, their life. So with that, instead of making the email all about you, make the email all about the prospect. I've used an example in the past, like think about if you had a hobby and you were with a friend and your friend does not share that hobby with you. Let's say you play golf and you're with a friend and your friend likes to play tennis and you don't play tennis. If you want to be less boring and improve the odds of your friend enjoying your company, and if you're going to talk about a sport, you can improve your odds of being successful with that by talking about tennis or playing tennis, the sport that you don't play. Because if you force your friend to talk about or play golf, what they don't play, they're more likely to be bored, less engaged, and be less interested in getting back together with you. So force your interactions to be more about the other person, what the other person cares about. And with your prospect, that's going to be their job, their company, and their interests. We're talking about email prospecting here. Do what you can to prevent your email from looking like a mass email. So to give you an analogy here or a metaphor to compare this to, imagine, close your eyes or figuratively close your eyes and picture yourself going to your mailbox at your home and checking the mail. Most likely you will open the mail and there will be promotional, what you would typically call junk mail in the mailbox. And I am probably pretty sure that you throw away most of those items pretty quickly. You don't open them up and read them, even if they're in an envelope. I mean, picture an envelope of junk mail versus like a two-sided direct mail advertisement. Picture like an envelope. If the envelope is professionally printed with the address printed, your address printed, you might look at it, look at who it's from, and you might end up just not even opening it, tearing it in half and throwing it away. And the reason why you were able to be confident in that is because it was professionally printed and you knew that it was a mass email and a mass piece of mail, and if you did not know who it was from, you knew that it was going to be, you weren't going to miss anything by throwing it away. Well, now picture looking at an envelope with your address handwritten, and you look at the return address and you don't know who it's from, but that's handwritten too. Do you rip this up and throw it away? I'm probably sure you do not. I'm probably sure because it's handwritten, you're going to open it up, and the reason why is because someone specifically wrote something out and mailed you something. So it must be something important or could be interesting, or you shouldn't throw it away because it's a one-to-one piece of mail. You need to have that same mindset with your email. So if your email looks like a mass email, your prospect is going to be more confident in instantly deleting the message. And so some things that make your email look like a mass email, of course, if there's like a more graphics or border or images or hyperlinks or formatting, it's more likely an email, a mass email. And the logic here is the same as the envelope being professionally printed. If someone takes the time to make an email look very cosmetically appealing, then it's less likely that it's a one-to-one email. It's just the exact same thing as a professional piece of physical mail. So with that, even if you are sending a mass email, try to make it look like it's a one-to-one email. So a quick example here is that even if you are using links, which I do recommend in your email prospecting so you can track your prospect clicking on links, with most email software, you can easily make hyperlinks. Well, what I do when I make hyperlinks is I actually make the hyperlink look like a website address in the same way that when when you type out like www.google.com and if you hit space, it turns it into a link. Well, even if you're inserting a link into your email, instead of making it a link text, make the text actually the URL. So I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's basically making your hyperlinks look like you just typed out a website address instead of doing hyperlinks. It makes it more like the handwritten envelope. Don't sell the product, sell the meeting. So something we talked about in a previous chapter when we talked about sales process was the first step in the sales process is the initial contact. From there, you're progressing to the meeting, and from the meeting, you're progressing to the presentation. The first step, when you are sending your email prospecting message, you are at the initial contact. So the next step is the meeting. So if you send an email message that's kind of designed around, this is the product I sell, do you need what I sell? You're really you're skipping both of the steps of the meeting and the presentation, and you're just selling the product. And you can greatly improve the effectiveness of your email messages and your email prospecting if you focus on selling the meeting instead of selling the product. And so I'm going to show you some email examples, and I'll show you what that looks like. Because your prospects are busy, and because they get a lot of messages from salespeople and non-sales related messages, you're going to need to reach out to your prospects multiple times. It's just good to have an approach that includes multiple prospecting email messages. Not only should you plan on sending each prospect multiple messages, but you should probably plan on reaching out to them in different ways as well. So we're talking about email prospecting here. In the last chapter, we talked about cold calling. So you should bring those two things together. There should also be voicemail messages. You could also include social media outreach. You could also include direct mail pieces. But to make your email prospecting more successful, you should, one, have multiple emails going out to each prospect and also have different types of communication as well. Because we are going to reach out to our prospect multiple times, and getting back to the email messages, since we're going to send multiple emails out to each prospect, what we can do is we can use those messages to try to educate the prospect. And because we're not trying to talk to them about our product or sell our product, we can educate the prospect on who we are and why it might make sense for them to talk to us at some point. And we can connect that with their interests of, their goal, their interests of improving their company, improving their job, improving their life. And so the story that you have that applies to that, you can break that story up into smaller individual stories or individual messages, and then spread those out over multiple messages and use that set of stories or that set of messages to educate the prospect on who you are and why they should talk to you at some point. I want you to not be apologetic. So they might say something like, hey, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're busy. I won't take too much of your time. And so when they're saying stuff like that, first of all, you don't need to apologize to them. I mean, they're a business person and operating in the business world. I mean, if we apply this to B2B sales, they're a business person operating in the business world. You're a business person. You have nothing to apologize for by interacting with them. You're not being rude. But if you do everything in a respectable way, you don't have anything to apologize for is one thing. The other thing is that apologizing is a very weak frame of mind. Now, don't get me wrong. I am a firm believer if you make a mistake, if you do something wrong, or if you don't know the answer to something, be very quick to either apologize or admit that you don't know the answer. But when you're doing outreach, whether it's email or cold call, you haven't done anything wrong. So there's nothing to apologize for. And picture if you had a bag of money. If you found a bag of money that someone lost and you're trying to find who it belonged to, or to make that more real, if you found a wallet that was on the ground and you're trying to figure out who it belonged to, would you be apologetic when you're going and interrupting people to see if the wallet belongs to them? Most likely you would not be, oh, I'm sorry to bother you, I won't take too much of your time. Can you do me a favor and listen to what I have to talk to you about? No, you wouldn't, because you know what you found is of tremendous value to the person that it belongs to. So you would be very confident in what you have to offer. Now, the thing is that when you're in product selling mode, you begin to forget about how valuable what you have is, because you're trying to push it on everybody and you're facing a lot of rejection and you're trying to sell to people that don't need what you sell. So you forget that what you have is so valuable. When you really are aware of the value of what you sell, you will realize that it's the equivalent of finding a wallet or finding a bag of money for the person that needs what you sell. So don't apologize for anything, or don't apologize for your outreach, should I say. The other thing that I notice is, and I don't know why salespeople do this, but don't question the prospects in your emails about the status of them reading or responding to your previous messages that you sent them. For example, you say, hey, did you see my last email? Did you read my last email? You never replied to my last email. I never heard back from you.